quenching our thirst. It's all about water. Our readings today have a very interesting connection, I think. Our first reading, we start with Moses. And Moses and the Israelites are wandering in the desert after they've left Egypt. And as many people do on a long journey, people start to complain. And they say to Moses, "Moses, we're thirsty. We need some water. Please help us out here. Why didn't you just leave us in Egypt? At least we had water there. Why did you drag us out of this?" And Jesus says to God, "God, what am I going to do with these people? They're going to stone me." And God tells Moses where to go to get water. He goes, takes his staff that he had in Egypt, strikes the rock in Horeb, and water pours out, and the people drink, and they are quenched. They are full of water. And they're happy for a time. So, I know a cat. And this cat doesn't, he has a water bowl, right? And there's water in it for him all the time. But he prefers not to drink from that water bowl. The cat would rather, after the shower's done, jump into the shower and lick the water that's dripping out of the faucet. Or jump up on the sink and lap up some water there that might be dripping. Or his favorite thing to do is to go on top of the fish tank where there's a water filter that's exposed, where the water is continually running. And the cat drinks from this running water that's moving. Now the cat doesn't know it, but the cat is illustrating an ancient concept that the Israelites had about the difference between water and living water. Living water was water that, in that time, was moving, was flowing. Water in a river, water in a creek, or especially water coming up from the ground at a spring. This was living water, and this water was used in the purification rituals or the religious rituals that the Jews had. Because this water was moving, it was alive, it had life to it. So the cat is ignoring the stagnant water that's been sitting in a bowl for days and looking for water that is alive. I think that sometimes we have that same urge for looking for water that is alive. In Jesus' day, as you may know from the story of something called the Good Samaritan, Samaritans and Jews did not like each other. They didn't hang out. They did not get along. They didn't talk to each other. Jesus and his disciples had been baptizing in the Judean countryside. They were traveling back to Galilee, Jesus' home territory, and to get there they had to go through Samaria, that area full of Samaritans. Tired from the journey, Jesus takes a break, goes off and sits by himself at a well while the disciples are going to find food. And as he's sitting, taking that break, the Samaritan woman approaches, and he speaks to her. Now, this speaking to her, it seems like a small thing to us. Okay? A teacher's talking to a woman. But at Jesus' time, he was crossing several cultural boundaries. First of which was that this woman was a woman. In Jesus' time, men were not expected to speak to women. Were expected not to speak to women in public. Second, as we've noted, she's a Samaritan. And so they shouldn't be talking at all. And third, Jesus recognizes something about her immediately. We don't know how, but he knows something about her life. When this woman approaches, Jesus recognizes in her the baggage, the shame that she is carrying with her. When we read this gospel last night, I was looking out at the people. And when we got to the part where Jesus says, "You've been married 5 times, and the man you're with now is not married, or is not your husband," I saw some people's eyebrows raise. Actual eyebrow raising. So this shame, this situation that this woman's in, was not just shameful at Jesus' time, but it raises eyebrows even today. We don't know why this woman was married 5 times. We don't know why she's living with a man who's not her husband now. But Jesus sees that this is part of the pain that this woman is carrying. He recognizes her for who she is. She's an outsider to Jesus. She's someone on the outside of the Jewish community, but Jesus speaks to her anyway. And after recognizing this about her, what does Jesus do? He tells her, you can drink from this well and you'll be okay for a time, but you'll get thirsty again. But if you partake of the living water, the moving, living water that I can bring, you won't be thirsty anymore. Have you ever felt like an outsider? Have you ever been afraid to speak to one in authority? Have you ever feel like you've done something that's unforgivable? Have you ever lived with shame? Has our culture told you that the way you are living is not the way that people are supposed to live? Have you ever been told that you're not worthy? When we're told we aren't worthy, when we have been shamed, our souls thirst for acceptance and assurance and renewal. We want to fill up that hole of shame that's inside us. Some of us look to relationships to fill this hole. We jump into our relationships and pour ourselves out into another person, hoping that that one other person will give us all we need, all our soul needs to survive and thrive. Some of us pursue money and having things and filling our houses with these things, thinking that only if we have enough, then we'll be happy, then we'll be filled, then we'll be satisfied. A singer-songwriter I've listened to for a long time, David Wilcox, has a song about how each of us has inside of us what he calls a break in the cup that holds love. And he's talking about relationships. That sometimes when we jump into relationships and pour ourselves out into another person, and the other person pours themselves out into us, we don't fill each other up. What we end up doing is emptying each other. That sometimes relationships, which are often life-giving, can also be an emptying thing. His refrain reminds us that relationships and money alone will not make us whole persons. At the end of his song, he sings that we need to go together, whether we're in a relationship or not, to what he calls the waterfall to be filled, to live under continual flowing water so that the cup inside of each of us, that hole that we have inside of us, will be continually filled as we live in the water. And this is what Jesus offers in the flowing, moving, living water, a new life that constantly overflows the cup inside us as we live and drink of living water. And we do not do anything to earn this living water. We read in our second reading today that like the woman at the well, we receive this life-giving water freely as a gift from God through Christ when we believe. It is faith alone that allows us to receive the water which fills our spirit. Jesus welcomes the outsider. Jesus welcomes Samaritans who had different religious beliefs than Jews. Jesus welcomed women as well as men to be filled and to jump into that waterfall, to live under it constantly, to be in the living water. Like the cat I mentioned earlier, we seek ways to fill up our lives. We seek ways that things are moving, that where life is evident, not just places that are stale and static. And we're reminded, we have visual reminders each time we come to worship of this life-giving water. We have the baptismal font. For those of you who were baptized, you were washed in the living water. You were made new. Your sin was washed away. And we need that constant reminder that the living water is here with us. We come each week to the supper, where we are filled with the body and blood of Christ, which is also living water. The story also kind of reminds me of that flow of worship. When we come, like the woman at the well, to see Jesus, we see Jesus at worship. We come with baggage. Every week something is weighing on us. We're invited to come and let Jesus see what that baggage we have. And what Jesus will do is he will recognize it, he will take it, and eventually he will put it on this cross. And he will take that shame and sin and disappointment away. And then will give us new life through what he describes as the living water. So when we come to worship, we empty it out each week. We are filled with the word. We are filled with song. We are filled with the meal. And then, just as the woman does when she is filled, she is so amazed that Jesus has done this thing for her. She goes out back to her community of Samaritans, of outsiders, and says, "This man has talked to me, and he knew who I was. Come and see. Come and learn about the living water. Be filled with this guy, Jesus." And they do. This woman, who is an outsider, who is full of shame in her society, is the first person in the Gospel of John to go back to her community and say, "Come and see." This woman is the first evangelist in the book of John. So as we're filled today, as we empty ourselves out of our shame, as we are filled with Jesus' presence, his living water, let us remember that the next step is like the Samaritan woman, to go out, to tell other people in our community about how Jesus has filled us up. What is it like at church when you are able to let go of that which you've been holding on to and be filled with new life? We should be so excited. I shouldn't say that. It said, avoid the word should. We are so excited. We're so happy that we are able to be filled with living water, that our response can be nothing else but, Jesus has done this for me. I want you to be a part of it too. So come, leave your shame here. Be filled with new water and be moved by the flowing spiritual water to share what God has done for you and what God continues to do in our lives as we live under that living, flowing waterfall every day. Amen. May it indeed be so.